About this is I have, and I guess this thing's streaming live. It says, welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy. Sign in to chat. Whatever that is. We're streaming. Okay, so um, I'm kind of experimenting here in this software because I'm not really sure. Yeah, it is. Okay, I see me. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start talking here shortly because I'm guessing this is being recorded on YouTube. I don't know, but it says we're live for 38 seconds. So this is our second episode of The Unnumbered Man. And I have with me a live interview with, I'm going to have an anonymous human being here who's going to share their story, their unnumbered story, and what their future looks like. So, what am I going to give me a code name for you because I don't want to parade your name on the world video for the for the near future. So, do you have is there a good pseudonym that I could use?
How about La Cubana?
La Cubana. And as they say in East LA, orale. Okay, so you're Cubana, and I'm like Mexicano. All right, so I'm the Scottish Mexican here from East LA, orale. So La Cubana. So my friend Cubana is here for an interview, very impromptu. This is kind of like physically sketchy. So those who see this and go, oh my gosh, this quality is just so weird. We're faking it from the start here. It's going to progress. We're going to download some really catchy little video things. It's going to make it look really good. You're hearing the rain in the background because I'm at my remote cabin hideaway. So we're just initiating something, and you're part of it. So La Cubana, thank you for coming. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the life without a number. In my first exciting episode, I explained my background and told them about my unnumbered story. And also, by the way, I didn't say this, but we have four reported federal reporter cases, actually two cases, four published opinions with my name on it. The first three were Carmichael versus the United States. This last one is Carmichael versus Pompeo. Now, so there's some notoriety right there. And it's on the issue of life without a number. And we won, and we are currently winning. So that's just for our listeners tuning in and just needs bait, the cliffhanger, to stick with us as we talk about this. So, La Cubana, I've invited you on this program today on The Unnumbered Man because you're an unnumbered woman. You and your husband are unnumbered, and life of faith, walking in faith, obedience, and sacrifice to the Lord Jesus Christ, and have lived a life for decades without numbers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to interview you for your background and your current project that you're working now, starting your third year of law school. Hear that, folks? An unnumbered lawyer. So I'm telling you, La Cubana has to be principled to be an unnumbered lawyer. So that's not a parasite. That's not a liar. Now that's kind of the like phrases people use and stuff. This is somebody with integrity who wants to uphold the law to glorify God. Because that's what La Cubana does in her life. So so we're going to talk about that. And thank you for coming on this Unnumbered Man show.
Thank you for having me.
Good.
Thank you.
So, and now, so tell me when you started living the unnumbered life, you and your husband.
Well, it was a gradual progression. You have to understand that theology and the law, at least in someone's life, converges over years, okay? I have a master's in theology, and I have a bachelor's in law and society. And when I was, and the reason why I say that is because those two, down my history, they converge. But I got to tell you where they individually started. When I was 13 years old, I was not a citizen. I was a legal resident, and my middle school, or say junior high school, told everybody, the parents of all the students, to get a number for the children. Apparently, at the time, when you were born, you were not issued a social security number. So I had no idea what was going on when I was 13. My parents got the paper, they applied for it, and bada boom, bada bing. All of a sudden, one day in 8th grade, all of us get this card. And I say, okay, fine, whatever, and I give it to my parents, and I keep trucking my life. I became a Christian in Cuba when I was 6. So now I've got 7 years of Christianity behind me. I had to flee communism. I had to come into a culture that was totally foreign in so many ways. And at the time, it would be about a year and a half into being here, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy gets assassinated. And at the time, we lived in New York City. And so everybody, that one of the suspects, quote unquote, was a Cuban somebody. Okay, so all of a sudden, not only was I hated for being a foreigner, but now I am a Cuban, and you killed our president. And oh my God, I would get beaten up after school, no matter where I was, Miami, New Haven, New York. Somehow I had tattooed on my forehead, beat me up, Scotty, Anyway, so I'm trucking my life, all right, and
Wait, I want to pause there. Beat me up,
Pardon?
Scotty. Beat me up, Scotty. So I just want to tell you, in East LA, Scotty, they called me Patty, as if everybody's an Irishman. Every white guy's an Irishman, right? Everybody untanned is an Irishman. So I was subjected to gang violence. Depending on which block I was in, you had to say which gang you rooted for. Right?
Oh my God.
So you and I have so many things that we can empathize with one another, and in the character building opportunity, and also character to have a desire to take on bullies.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah,
you can
and it was
proceed.
very scary
Yeah.
because, at least you know the language. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture, the
Right.
culture. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know what they expected out of me, other than, just living and breathing. But anyway, yeah, we both were bullied and beaten up or whatever.
Minorities,
for irrelevant reasons.
Right. Right.
Okay, so I'm trucking along. I'm going to church. I graduated from high school, 6th in my class, in 10 years of being here. And so I go to a Christian university and get a bachelor's in actually psychology, but I had a lot of Bible classes. I could have gotten a second bachelor's in Bible, but they didn't want to do that, whatever. So anyway, and then I meet my husband in 1976. And we started a band. I'm not going to say the name because then you probably know who I am.
Yeah.
So, and we toured at a period in church history where drums and guitar were replacing piano and organ in the sanctuary.
Right.
So 4 years after having met him at a gig that I did at a church, a coffee house actually, he and I got married. So, first event, he and I got married, so I had to change my name on that Social Security card to have my married name. Did I think any biblical or theological violation about that? No. Why? Because the legal end of things, that both of them are going up and converging as time goes by, they did not require a number for identification
Right.
at the time.
That's right.
And so, in fact, the card itself on the back, it says not to be used for identification.
Right.
So I took that for what it was worth. Yeah, no identification. Somehow I felt like I had to do that. I don't even ask me why. Okay, so now time keeps going on. All right, and we're going to go forward, fast forward to 9/11. Okay, so 9/11, all of a sudden now, we've got these men that made up social security numbers. They got into this country. They got trained to fly whatever plane that they were trained. And that event started the collision of theology with the not so much the legal system, but the political / legislative end of things. And because of 9/11, of course, we have the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act requires now, or did, this is what they said, that an SSN is now going to be used as identification. So we've got 4 things going on. You've got the Patriot Act, you got the Real ID Act, you got the Know Your Customer Act, and the most recent was a change or an addition, an amendment to Title 26, saying that you have to give the Social Security number to get a passport. However, 10 years from 2018, so in 2008, I had gotten a passport from Condoleezza Rice without any problems, without the SSN, because I provided the required
statement,
legal cause, right, for not giving that number. I did not, neglect to give it, or, I had a reason why I did not give it, and they require an affidavit. So,
okay, hold that thought. I'm going to interrupt you. Okay, we're going to take it from there. I'm going to do a little bit of a legal history. Some of this information we had in our first case against the Navy, the conversation came up with the mandatory nature, whether it's mandatory or voluntary, to identify with a Social Security number. So I'm going to bring our watcher, listener up to date with some of the things that impact what you said and some of the timeline that at the time you didn't know about. And I'm going to ask you a question about the timeline that you gave before you go on with the continuation of the passport story. Because eventually we're going to get to your law studies. So, but let's drop back. 1943, well, actually 1933, they started Social Security. It was completely bogus, completely unconstitutional. It's a long story, don't want to go into that. However, 1943, Mr. Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, FDR, issued an executive order, 9347, I think. And it is, it directed all executives of each agency, department in the executive branch of the government to use the Social Security number as a sole record identification number. I think it said at the time there was over 700,000 records had been established for Social Security benefits. Then, it was an executive order, and the language said, shall use the Social Security number. However, it didn't have any force of law. It didn't begin to be used as the taxpayer identification number until 1961. So in our Navy case, it came up as a discussion in the Federal Circuit when we were on appeal before the panel of 3 judges, is they were kind of mocking the U.S. attorney when she's trying to say this executive order is some massive, compelling governmental interest. And they pointed out, listen, the IRS didn't even start using it till 61. That's not a mandate. The Navy didn't start using it till 1972. That's not a mandate. So right there, before this panel of 3 judges, they chewed up the U.S. attorney on that. But this is my comment about it, is the Privacy Act was instituted in 1974 because people complaining that the SSN was becoming like the number of the beast. And so the Privacy Act was kind of one of those things, well, to appease that crowd, And as long as a government agency wasn't using that number prior to it's like January 1st, 1974 or whatever, if they were using it before that date, they're grandfathered. But if they weren't using the SSN after January 1st, 1974, they couldn't use the SSN as a record, kind of a general record keeping ID. So what happened? All the agencies jumped in prior to that date and instituted the number of the beast. Now, okay, you might not think it is, but I'm going to use the term number of the beast just because I don't want to say SSN. Or I might say SSN, either way. And then in 1996, what you didn't realize at the time is Congress, in the Contract on America, GATT, NAFTA thing, and Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, all those guys, and so that way you had guys on both sides of the aisle doing the wrong thing. They established this contract, I call it Contract on America, where they had this deadbeat dad statute, Title 42, Section 654, and its sequences. So part of that is Section 666, paragraph A13. Remember Revelation chapter 13? Well, we've got 666, paragraph 13, that says that nobody can get, every state that collects welfare benefits and gives it to these deadbeat dad children have to ask on the application for a professional license, occupational license, marriage license, recreational license, and driver's license for an SSN. So at that point, you can't get any of those occupational realities. So you're either going to have to stop your occupation or continue your occupation without a license. Or that would also mean get married without a license, or go fishing without, or use an automobile without a license. If identifying with the voluntary Social Security number, it goes against your reality. So we're going to come back up to date. That's what I wanted to talk about. That happened in 1996. However, you mentioned the Patriot Act and the requirement that you could no longer have any banking. And it turns out, like you said, they said the Patriot Act was mandating this, give me an SSN or no banking. Turns out, if you actually read the Patriot Act, it's pretty soft. And it says to the banks to know their customer, to have their name, their address, and other information so that they can reasonably be sure they know their customer. That is not a mandate to impose the number of the beast. However, the Treasury Department has used that as an excuse to do what they're doing now. So we're going to, over time in this Unnumbered Man series, you're going to hear about dealing with each of these issues as a matter of law and as a matter of faith and obedience and sacrifice and all that kind of stuff. So now what I'm going to do with my guest here tonight on the Unnumbered Man episode 2 is we're going to be talking to La Cubana, and she's going to take us from this place where it wasn't very clear at what point did you come to the conclusion that there was a conflict between your being associated with this SSN and your faith in Jesus and your obedience.
It started when I realized that without it, I could not buy or sell or be engaged in activity that would allow me to buy or sell. And so that's the qualifier, right. It's not some arbitrary number that they're going to stick on you just because. Right. It's got to prevent you in some way to buy. It has to prevent commerce in your life.
Right.
Okay, that is the qualifier.
Yes.
If it's not doing that, it's not it.
Okay.
Okay. So, and that's what came to my realization. All right. Now, to go to work or to buy supplies for a job or whatever that is, I need a driver license. To do ministry, to go somewhere outside the country, which, by the way, I have not done that since, I think, 99. I need to give that number in order to get a passport. Fortunately, that has been even easier than getting the driver license. Although I got to put a parenthetical thing here that there is a statute, and I spoke to my congressional rep about this because I complained when the second time around of renewing the passport, they denied me that back in 2018 when I was renewing the one that was issued to me without the SSN, and I was going to renew the same process that I had done 10 years prior. And they said, no, sorry, we're going to deny you that. And when I asked for a formal administrative hearing, they said, oh, you're not entitled to that. And I hit the roof. It's what the heck? What do you mean I'm not entitled to a remedy?
Yeah,
Every law, you
right.
have to be entitled to a remedy.
Not the number of the beast, you silly goose. Now, in reality, that's one of those. What do you mean the number of the beast? It has so many weird extra governmental. The nature of it is sublime. It's weird. It's insane. So, but I want to talk about what you just said, so our viewer listener can understand the details of it. If you read the statute that came out and officially, I guess, kicked off in 2017, for years, if you read the back of your passport, it said, according to Title 26, Section 6039 Echo, large E, the IRS demands that you give a social security number, or you may be subject to a $500 penalty. Well, if you go read the silly IRS code, tax code, and you actually read the reference, and you get down to paragraph something C, there's good cause reason there. So there's a good cause for not identifying with a religion, with a social security number. One could be you never applied for it. One could be, I think you have a natural right to say no, even if you got associated with it. I think that's under the 9th Amendment, but it hasn't been tested yet. But also, you've got the First Amendment, the religious freedom. Religious freedom. No, you can't establish religion or, deny the free exercise of it. So if your free exercise of religion is not identifying with the number of the beast, that's a good cause. And they've actually got an IRS form that you're supposed to fill out to let them know there's a good cause here. So, and send it with your passport, but they don't tell you about it, but it's there. I found it. So, so this law came out because it said scary things on the form, but it turns out they couldn't actually stop you from getting a passport if you didn't put a social security number. So it turned out in 2017 that they enacted a statute, and this is what's really crazy, is the statute that they finally enacted thanks to, what's the guy's name? Senator Mitch McConnell. It came in a 400-plus page detailed statute regarding infrastructure and roads in the United States. Had nothing to do with passports.
Right. In fact, it was on page like 500 and something.
Yeah,
all the way at the very end.
Yeah, it's section 11,320 or something. It's crazy. Now I looked it up because I wanted to go, for discovery, to go talk to the legislator that sponsored the bill. Turns out it was a nice guy from Indiana, nice Christian guy. Got a bunch of Christian guys to sponsor this bill. It was HR 22. And it was a one-page, not 430 pages, a one-page statement with regard to Obamacare that said if an employer has 25 or more employees, they were subject to the Obamacare thing. But it said, well, what if those 25, if 10 of them are retired military? You don't need to have Obamacare if you've got 10 retired military. There's only 15 that aren't covered. So it was a statute that allowed employers to deduct from their number, the capitation of how many employees they have for consideration for Obamacare. It would eliminate out of the count, those who were in the retired military or under some kind of plan like that, particularly the military. It went and it got both houses were all thumbs up, not both houses, both Democrats and Republicans. It was a bipartisan, everybody was excited. It goes up to the Senate. Mitch McConnell had an amendment. His amendment was the FAST Act, Fixing America's Surface Transportation, 430 pages, every
Yeah.
single ounce of HR 22 was gone. So it comes back to the House as an amendment, having nothing to do with the original. But everybody's reported, oh, both houses gave the thumbs up to this thing when it went up to the Senate. Nobody rereads what it started with. And so it ended up being this statute that says, way down, that that the Secretary of State now has the authority that he may, not must, that he may deny or revoke a passport if somebody did not give a social security number. And there's little qualifiers in there that gives him discretion to adjust. But so that's for our watcher, viewer, listener to understand what she's facing. So here she has her passport, no SSN for reasons of religion and other things, and she's starting to learn about the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. And then she comes to 2018 and they tell her no. And I want to tell you this little story about when we were in the federal circuit before a three-judge panel, and my lawyer Herb Titus gets up and he does his first 12 minutes or whatever it was and reserves the rest for rebuttal or whatever. And so the U.S. attorney gets up and she starts to speak, and I believe it was Judge Dyke, and I believe he's still on that panel on the federal circuit. Is he interrupts the U.S. attorney and he says, let's say somebody wanted to join the Navy and you said, okay, we're going to let you join the Navy, but you've got to promise to never go to church again. And I almost fell out of my seat because I realized, yes, this guy's read the brief. He gets it. That's exactly what this comes down to. And she says, well, I would say that would be unlawful. He says, okay, go ahead, proceed. Right? So that's what they're doing here. You can have a passport, but you've got to forsake your faith. That's exactly what's going on here. So we're going to take it from there. So 2018, they denied the passport to you. And tell us about, so we're going to pause there. That we're going to leave that as a cliffhanger. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to have you tell us about your venture into study to become a lawyer, which you're now approaching your third year, and your discussions with the Bar Association of your state regarding whether or not, because of Section 666, paragraph A13, that they would allow you to have a certified to practice law in that state. So tell us about approach to your legal training that you're currently in, and that discussion with the Bar Association.
Okay, well, in 2018, I was applying for, going to law school, and I had to look at all of these different, depending on what state or what school I was going to go to, they would have different requirements. And one of the schools said that they required the SSN according to the statute of that state, and so I was very familiar with that statute on other issues, and I read the whole thing, saying that they said that the statute allowed universities to require that number. The word university is not in that statute at all.
That's right.
And so I go in there and I tell them, well, no, I'm not going to do that. So they summarily did not accept me, but I called the Florida Bar and I said, hey, well, because I also looked at the requirements that the bar requires these certain things.
Right.
And so I called them and I said, hey, I cannot give this number on religious reasons. And they said, well, you can give another number like your passport. So that's what got me going down that road, because I really wasn't into renewing the passport at the time. I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to go anywhere. So,
but didn't they ask you about? Didn't they say, well, you're not going to be able to practice law unless you can get a religious accommodation like a passport, like something that that showed the federal government's tolerating this nuance of yours?
No, there's two separate things. I think
Okay.
you're mixing two different
Okay.
organizations.
Okay.
The bar and the National Council of Bar Examiners, they're two separate entities.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't have to deal with the NCBE until recently, this year, okay? But with the bar, I was dealing with them in 2018 because I said to them, I wrote to them, if you're not going to let me take the bar exam and be admitted because of this number, tell me now, please, because I don't want to spend the time and the money on something that I'm not going to be allowed to do. And by the way, parenthetically, I am saving all of my receipts and everything, all of my expenses. If they say that I still need to do that,
right,
I can maybe sue them for
yes.
damages.
Yes.
And there are a lot of damages, okay? So that's
yes.
a sidebar there.
No, it's important. It's an important sidebar.
Yeah, well, you
yes.
know, I'm struggling along and doing whatever. The school that I'm going to, I also had to jump hoops at them, you know, and it's a Christian university, and yet they're having problems with me because when I went to with my husband to go and just take a tour and stuff like that, and sat in the office of the financial director or whatever, and I said I can't apply for a loan.
Right.
She rolls her eyes. I said, well, how are you going to pay for this? Well, you know, if the Lord wants me here, He's gonna give me the money, you know, donations, so whatever. Far. And up to this point, it has been that way.
Right.
You know, while I have a friend, one of my classmates. She has, you know, the military's paying for everything for her, but you know that means that the entire nation is paying for her.
Yes.
Nobody's paying for me.
Right.
You know, only those that desire to do that, not that are forced to do that.
Yes.
So, you know what I'm saying? And there's a back way in forcing people for my friend to get, you know, a full, you know, all tuition and room and board and all that kind of stuff at the hand of the government. Okay? And a lot of them are like that.
Yes.
And so so they all are in debt, and they all, you know, have this big looming, you know, thing when they graduate.
Right.
So anyway, but thankfully up to this point, and come Thursday of this week when I leave, by the time next Monday comes around, I gotta have everything that is required of me for this coming semester. I don't know how I'm going to get that even now as we speak, but it'll be there. I just know it'll be there because it has, and you know. So anyway, so I'm dealing with the bar, and I send them that letter, and they, you know, all this stuff, and so I apply for the passport to satisfy the bar, and then, you know, the State Department denies me and says I'm not entitled to even question it, and so I talked to my rep. The rep at that time was a guy that was a Christian and had no idea about the First Amendment. I'm telling you, it was just so frustrating that this man in Congress did not know what I was talking about and did not even do anything to get me a remedy.
Right.
Okay? And I was really angry because I would hear him in the morning, you know, on the radio, and I said, this guy is such a farce.
Well,
you know, but anyway.
I'm going to interrupt you again, because what happened is, she said, now for my viewer listener on the Unnumbered Man, is they, with this law that says they have permission to turn down somebody if they don't give an SSN. They also put there's another statute, I can't remember it off the top of my head, it's a long story. It created a law that enabled the Code of Federal Regulations to make a list of things that can't be appealed. So there's all these things that you can appeal. You could be a pedophile. You could owe the government $50 or more than $50,000 in taxes and have a writ ne exeat republica imposed on you after huge due process in a district court to prove, you know, with the full gamut of due process, it finally declares that you are you have a significant amount of tax debt or whatever. But but not giving an SSN is excluded from an appeal. So you're presumed to be willfully, knowingly, intelligently, and recklessly not identifying with an SSN. It's presumed in both the statute that supports the Code of Federal Regulations, and it's 51.61. So 22 CFR 51.61 or something like that. It's pretty close to it. So for our viewer listener, it's built in to say, oh, by the way, regarding the SSN, the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply to you. So with that status, go ahead and
due
continue.
process
Right.
and the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to you. You don't have due process at all.
Right. And I think, right, we'll talk about the difference between 14th Amendment and the Fifth Amendment in another episode. And what we'll do here is we will, because that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about on this series of videos that I'm going to do every Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. And I want to create and have these kind of conversations and get into the details of those particular things. So now we are up to date with, you were told by the university, okay, give us a number, and you can't fill out the FAFSA because that's asking for a welfare benefit. But nonetheless, you can still apply because there's somebody in that organization is going to have enough sense to at least let you apply for the passport. If not, we don't want to mention Matt, et cetera, who may have been in charge at the time. There's some people with some rational minds that are involved in law school. So, so you now, okay, so you know where you were. I forgot. I got the long COVID memory dementia here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm in the office with the financial director, and she rolls her eyes. And by the way, when you apply for law school, you have to go through the law school admissions council. And I told them that I was not going to give an SSN, and so they just made one up.
Oh,
They just put some numbers in there. They had no problems with that.
Right. That's normal protocol for colleges. They just have, like, it's starts with a 9. When I went to college, they just put a 9 in some sequential number.
Yeah. Well, with that, it wasn't a 9, but I went back. Let me backtrack a little bit. After having gotten my theology bachelor's, my master's, and the bachelor and an associate. I got 3 degrees behind me already. And then I start reading stuff, legal court cases and stuff, and I'm thinking, this sounds way too good to be true. I'm going to have to learn how to research this stuff so I can see for myself whether this stuff is true. So I go back to junior college to get an AS degree, which is the lowest degree you could possibly get. That was in 98.
Mm-hmm.
That's how long I've been messing with this stuff. 98, and I said to the registrar, I can't get that number. No problem. We'll just make one up. And they did. And then I graduate from there, and then I go to a second university to get a second bachelor, law and society concentration. I told them the same thing, and lo and behold, they make up a number for me there too.
Now, did you have any scholarships during any of those things?
I got scholarships in all of those.
So that's an important thing. There's an IRS 1098 form that they have to send to the IRS, and you know what they put? They either put the student number or they put not applicable. So that's an IRS form. Yeah, I mean, you may not have been aware of it, but I had to deal with my unnumbered kids when they went to college. So just note, folks, it's an IRS form the school has to send in without that number. Okay, proceed.
Yeah, and the university, the law school I'm at now, if they have to send something in, they don't have that number either. I don't know what the heck they're sending, and it's not really my problem.
Doesn't matter.
Because, it doesn't matter. Right. So anyway, back to talking to the Congress member. He did not run again, and the lady that's there now, I really like her, and I spoke to her. This was back in 2021, I think. they said, yeah, well, you're not entitled for an administrative hearing. I said, well, that needs to change.
Yes.
You got to change that. Because how can there be a law with no remedy?
Right.
There has to be a remedy always. And you need to, I tell
Yes.
you, no matter where you are, if someone says you don't have a remedy, it's someone you need to change it, because there is no law in this country that cannot have a remedy for you.
Right. And
it's not, it's beyond,
Yeah.
what this country is about. Anyway.
Yeah. So
nonetheless.
what did she say? Is she going to do something about it?
Yeah, well, she said she was.
We'll see. Oh, by the way,
Yeah,
I want to
we'll see.
tell you something. The passport form has changed since you and I have
Oh.
had correspondence, and I'm not going to give away the information to our viewer. They're going to have to keep listening to find out what happened in this exciting episode. So, just by the way, like in January or something, it was in 2022, they changed the back, and they still blew it. They still messed up, but they changed it with regard to that affidavit. That affidavit is now mentioned. You know, that fake affidavit that they have you try to give an affidavit about a third party's paperwork, which makes it an invalid affidavit. Well, that requirement for the affidavit is now on the back of the passport form. Actually describes it. So they messed up, but they're trying to cover their bases. They're trying to continue to impose their ridiculous behavior, but now it's a little more official because the back of the passport form has actual OMB number on it, right? So it's okay. So we're going to continue working this, folks. We are doing something about this problem. So okay. So continue on with your story.
Okay, so then I got a hold of you because you've been doing this case with the passport, and a letter that you had drafted had really good information, and I tweaked it, personalized it, looked up the statutes, did all that stuff. Basically what I said, I sent it to what's his name, Blinken?
Yes.
And I said, I would like to get my passport, but if you choose not to do that, and this is very, paraphrased,
Yeah.
I'm going to join the court case that's ongoing now as a plaintiff. So now it would have been, 5 plaintiffs?
Yeah.
In your case, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, I get a letter from them saying, hey, we decided to open your application. All you have to do is send us a picture.
Now,
and we'll issue you.
and I want to address that with the customer. Now, the viewer, at the Unnumbered Man, viewer. So what people are used to is you send in the thing and they say, give us 90 days to get an affidavit from your great-grandmother who's dead. And if you don't produce that affidavit from your great-grandmother who's dead in 90 days, then you can reapply again. You have to pay $120 every time that they turn you down. And they just turn you down, and then it's like a revolving door. They just keep, I guess, I don't know if it's an income source or something like that. But that's what they do. Turns out there's a regulation that says that the Secretary of State has the prerogative to open any application. I don't care if it was 10 years ago. They can open it. So that detail was in the letter. And so she said to Blinken, now you can't see it, La Cubana, but I've got snake eye fingers, like I'm poking people in the eyes, like the three, what do you call it, the Three Stooges. So she pokes Blinken in the eyes in writing and saying, you are going to open my application, you are going to approve my religious accommodation, and you're going to issue the passport, and I'm not going to send $110, or you've made me waste $110 and gives me standing under the Privacy Act, and you have to pay me at least $1,000 for the injury. Blah, blah. So there were details in the letter, and it went to Mr. Blinken, and I'm not going to tell you who else, but we courtesy copied certain people to a certain address. We'll talk about that later in a future episode. And so it was one of these things where, if you're going to, what do they call it? Break the veil, the corporate veil, it's sort of like United States corporate veil kind of busting, is you triple down on making sure they know how serious you are, and it gives evidence that you kind of know what you're doing. So the point where they're less likely to play a game with you. So that's where she was. So her letter came out, but tell us too, who was it told you that you can't practice law even if you get a law degree unless you have that number, unless you get some kind of a religious accommodation for, like, say, a passport. Tell us about that aspect.
Well, that did not happen that way.
Okay.
No, nobody told me that I could not practice law. All they said was that I had to provide a number. Okay? If it's not the SSN, this is the bar. If it's not the SSN, it would have to be the passport number. However, the NCBE also, I have to create an account with them so that I can take in November what's called the multi-state professional responsibility exam. This is where they're going to test you on ethics of the legal profession.
Right.
Okay, so here on the very first page of that thing, and I did this in March of this year. I've been messing with that for months, okay? Right. And so, first page, I'm putting my name and all that kind of stuff. So that Social Security number. I said, oh, great. Here we go again.
Right.
But there's a link underneath it. Click here if you do not have one. Well, I can't do that either. Although I did not apply for it, they issued one. However they want to view it, it's somehow connected to a name that is my name.
It's it's La Cubana-esque.
Yeah, right. And so I said, I can't click on that either because then I'll be lying. And this is an ethical test that I'm taking.
Right.
So I'm talking to the woman that is the head of this whole thing. And I said, you're telling me, why don't you tell your IT people to just change the title of that link?
Yeah.
It would be 5 seconds and it'd be done.
Yes.
It's not going to take that long.
Right.
They could get in the program, just type a new name, bada boom, bada bing, it's changed. I can click on it.
Right.
And then I said, look, because if I click on it, all right, and then somebody 10 years from now says, oh, you wanted an exception from the number, but you clicked on this link 10 years ago, you're a liar, you're unethical, you can't practice law.
Right.
And she says, she blew me away. She says, you are exactly the type of attorneys that we want. I said, whoa.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
it's very encouraging.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But she says, well, in June, this is March, okay? 3 months later, in June, they're supposed to make all kinds of changes on the program of the website. I'll get back with you in June. Lo and behold, June comes and it says, they approved everything. It's going to stay the same. And I said, why are you doing this to me?
Right.
It's like, I got to take this exam before I take the bar exam.
Right.
And the number that I give you has to match the number that I give the bar.
Right.
It's got, because the records have to coincide, okay?
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And she's talking to her legal, which kind of set me at ease, because she says, look, because you're communicating with me, telling me the truth about what you're feeling and what your religious beliefs are, you're not lying to us.
Right.
Lying is a willful intent to deceive.
To deceive. Now just know, because a young lady in my young adult Bible study just went through her PhD for counseling and the ethics qualification thing. She just went through that. And one thing she said about the test is there's 2 right answers. Out of 4, there's going to be 2, and one is better than the other. And so you're actually indicating which one's the better. And I had just finished a series on ethics I was teaching in my Bible study. And I actually explained to my students, spoiler alert, ethics are situational. And that's why they're ethics, okay? So, So one of the things you did when you selected what you selected is you chose the best answer available, notwithstanding it's not an absolute.
Well, yeah, and said it, but I noticed them.
Right.
I said to them, this is how I believe clicking this is a violation, so I want you to know, put it on my record in your folder over there, wherever you are, in Michigan or Wisconsin, that I have a problem with that, and that I told you that I had a problem with that. So clicking on that stupid link that you could have changed the name, it does not mean that I'm unethical.
Right.
I'm not unethical because I'm clicking on that. And so I was able then, once I got in, then put the passport number in there, okay, so that, so it's been 20 years now that I have not had, that I've had a passport without the SSN. And the first one that I got, by the way, that $500 possible fine or whatever, it was there then.
Right. But it was never enforced because there's always a good cause.
Right.
It's
right. Yeah, there's a good cause.
Right.
Yes.
And now here's the other thing, and people, well, you just translated the SSN for the passport. No, you don't, because she could get a new passport next year, and it will have a different number on it. There's a reality there.
It's never the same number for a passport.
Right.
And I can adjust my account as the number changes.
Right.
And the passport does not prohibit me from being involved in commerce.
Right. That's right.
But the SSN will, and it does.
So what we're going to do, let's go back to that letter, and it's been about an hour into it, almost 51 minutes. But we're going to go to the beauty about what happened with you is that you sent the letter poking Mr. Blinken and his friends in the eyes. I think there were maybe four people, courtesy copy. And suddenly there wrote a letter. Dear La Cubana, we've read your letter. We've opened your 3-year-old passport without any fee or new application or fee. And we granted your religious accommodation. And if you'll send a photograph to the such and such office, you will get your passport. Now, since then, in our case, we've actually we've gone toe to toe with them and had them admit that even the new photograph wasn't required because everything you gave when you gave that application was totally lawful. You were entitled. They said, well, it's not entitlement. Yeah. Actually, if you look up the statute, it's entitled with that passport and your citizenship, that you're entitled to that passport when you fill out that form and you qualify.
Yeah, it was a timely submission.
Yes.
It was timely.
And you had the right photograph ID called the passport that you were relying on. You're entitled to it, and actually you didn't need to replace the photograph. But you weren't going to die on the photograph sword. You didn't give a hoot. We had to die on the photograph sword because they were trying to moot our case. And we needed to be able to say, no, we had everything you needed to obey the law and give us our passports on the day you got the application. So it's kind of encouraging. We've made a whole lot of progress, and it's been off the radar. Nobody knows what we're doing. But your letter from them with a State Department header and signed and saying you have a religious accommodation, that is... and only based on your letter to Mr. Blinken, dear Secretary of State, give it to me or else.
And I think that the reason why they didn't want me to get on the case is because if there are enough people and there's good precedent, then a bunch of people are going to get in the bandwagon.
Yeah. We actually need a class action. We need a class action, but you know what? We need a lawyer. Right now, we don't have one. You never know. In a year from now, we might, and have Equal Access to Justice Act to pay for it. But right now, I think we need I think it should be a class action suit. But I don't have the lawyer to do it. So okay, so you got your passport, and it says La Cubana on it. It's got a new number.
It's got the ugliest picture that I've ever taken.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you should have stood your ground and had them issue it. No. So where are we now at this point in our discussion? And I think it's been educational, and entertaining, especially whether they're an expert watching this video or an absolute novice and we're thinking we're absolute idiots. And, because we're nuts, we're religious kooks, and now they're going to be freaking out over their eschatology and all this kind of stuff. Well, good. I think that's fun. I think that's what video entertainment is about, is to stir people's emotions and minds and all that. So at this point, you are, and unless I'm interrupting, should we shift into your current status in your legal training and see where you are?
My status?
Yeah. So you got a passport.
I'm starting my third year on Monday.
On Monday.
The 22nd.
And how much money are you supposed to have in cash?
I'm supposed, without books and housing, I'm supposed to have $8,000.
$8,000. That's not bad. It's just right now you have zero. Now I will say,
Right.
so what we understand, and this is where I'll tell you, I used to do a faith and freedom show, and in my Preservative Talk Radio. Go to preservativetalkradio.com. This is my radio voice. And so I had a show where I was talking, but most of the things I do, this isn't just about law and activism and constitution. This is about, I'm about Jesus. I'm about obeying God.
Amen.
I'm about my salvation, the forgiveness of my sins, and the filling of the Holy Spirit, and miracles. You ought to be folks, be in the Navy and ask the Navy to issue a pseudo SSN a pseudo number, a Navy generated service number in lieu of using an SSN, and get kicked out and be unemployable and unbankable and every other able and undriver's licenseable and everything that comes as a matter of course in section 666 of the Federal Welfare Code. You want to be in that situation with a wife and child and a mortgage. And you know what happens?
Yeah.
Miracles. Oh, by the way. Oh, and I'm going to tell you a story. Okay, guys, I've got a story. And this is for you, La Cabana. And this is encouragement to us all. Right? Okay. So obviously I complained to God before I chunked the number. I complained. But God, what about my children? They'll never be able to go to college, et cetera, et cetera. So my kids, 2 of them went to college, and guess what? No debt, and combined 9 years of college to the oldest 2. The next ones had a different path, station in life and purpose. But we had to go in there and basically, I hope you're still on the phone because I just knocked it down. But there was a day when my daughter needed $9,000 to be at the college. It was we were sending her off to college. They needed $9,000. But what had happened was the government owed me $26,000. And they owed it in April of 2006. And La Cubana, you're still there, right?
I'm here.
Okay. So they owed it in April. And so I went and took the Navy money and I bought a Class A motorhome, cash, on eBay, without an SSN, without a driver's license. So, they actually required those things when I went to go pay for the thing, and I just told them the story and how we could afford it for cash. It's called a Navy judgment, right? So we had 6 figures, and I was going to take, after all of these years of suffering my family went through, I was going to hook them up with a blessing for 60 days and 12,000 miles. So I got this motorhome eBay, and so this check's due, and that we left in May, or I think it was May, and we came back in August, and that $5,000, I was driving the $5,000 because I had debts to pay. I had a bunch of stuff, so it's like all the money was gone except about $60-some thousand. We paid for the motorhome. We went on the trip. We're on our way home, and this check from the Navy, they keep saying, "Oh, we've sent it. It is not coming. It is not here." So I called my lawyer and I said, "Herb, we're in trouble. I got to have on Monday. I need $9,000." And this was on Wednesday. And he says, "David, it's not here." So I go and we're coming back on the motorhome, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I need to call my wife's cousins that hate my guts because they think I'm an idiot, and they're all rich, but they think I'm an idiot. But I need to beg and say, hey, I'm going to sell the motorhome. I'm good for it. That I can sell it for at least $50,000, but I need 9,000 now, right? And I'm thinking that all this. And on Wednesday, after the Herb told me that the check was still wasn't there, is I go to a church in Pascagoula, Mississippi, Church on the Rock, and the guy was preaching on Jesus sleeping in the boat, and I realized, oh man, I'm supposed to be sleeping in the boat. It wasn't about his power to shut down the storm. It was about I'm supposed to be sleeping in the boat. So I repented of my stress, and I said, God, I've been trusting you all these years. I'm not going to change my behavior because there's a check in the mail. And so I just was at peace. And, Herb told us there's no check, and it's the money's due Monday. And I'm driving through the Virginia border at about midnight, and then we're going to go to church the next day. And I'm thinking about, well, I could go up before the church and hit everybody up for a loan. I started laughing at myself. I said, no, man, you're supposed to be sleeping in the boat. Just relax. So I go to church. We show up. We see all these people we haven't seen in 2 months. And they're, how was your trip? And everything like that. And a lot of these people at church don't like me suddenly because they think I'm a nut. And they're ticked off that we won a case against the United States government.
They're ticked off at it?
Yeah, because we're vindicated, right? We're right. They're wrong. Yes, I'm actually obeying God, and my family's being blessed, and we've lived off miracles for 10 years, and now we got a blessing. But I don't want to go tell the church. It's going to be pretty embarrassing. Say, oh, by the way, we need $9,000. So I'm sitting in church. We enjoyed everything, and we're just about to leave. And because we've enjoyed meeting with everybody, we're like going to have to lock the building up. We're the last family out with one other family, and a guy walks up to me. He says, David, you've got a need. And for your viewer, you can't see me, but I'm acting it out for our unnumbered men viewers. And he says, David, you have a need. It's kind of financial. There's something to do with some kind of an automobile or something, the motorhome, like the money's on the motorhome, right? And he says, I don't know what it is, but you have a need and I'm going to meet it. I've never had this happen to me, but I was standing back there in front of the sound booth and God spoke to me, and he told me this. How's that for a weird miracle? So I tell the guy the whole story I just told you. Right? And he goes, and his wife's standing, and his wife came up, and she's hearing it. And I said, so after all that, after telling the story, I need $9,000. He said, done. Where do I need to send it? So it turns out he had this stack of money that was sitting, he was going to invest it or something. It was just sitting in his bank account. And his wife, look, when he said done, her eyes got real big. She was now not my friend. Right. But what is, my husband's a nut. And so, so that was it. So I told him. So the next day he sends his money off to the school, with my daughter. She goes off with $9,000. And then, so my lawyer calls me, he says, David, I talked to the Navy. They said it, and they're going to have to start the paperwork over because they thought they created a check, but they can't find the record. And so he tells me all this Monday, and I tell him, and I call him, I say, Herb, and I told him the story. He actually cries. I can hear him crying on the phone. He's so happy and relieved and just glorifying God the way God just has just done crazy things over all these years. And then he calls me back at 2 p.m. He's laughing. And he said, David, I just went to my mailbox. Guess what's in the box? The check, $26,000. But it turned out he wouldn't, it would have been too late. And it was written to his law firm. And he wasn't going to be able to get the money there because it's got to own the law firm. They don't do anything with it till the check clears. I mean, they're lawyers. They're very careful. And it was going to be a week before we would have seen any money, notwithstanding the check actually showing up on Monday. So again, the story, this is for, this way it'll make people tune out because they think, this guy thinks that he knows somebody who talked to him and said God's told him something. Hey, I'm not in charge of God's providential control over people's mind. Okay? Just leave me alone on that. Now, so with regard to you, La Cubana, you've got 2 years of law school behind you. You're an unnumbered woman with an unnumbered husband who are living on the edge, and I have great hopes for somebody with your perspective to join the ranks of the unnumbered, but have somebody who's not a liar, who's not a parasite, who's a woman of faith with a husband of faith, who's of faith, obedience, and sacrifice. And so I'm kind of going to, like, my wife would wish me to throw in all my chips, all my serving people. Oh, by the way, you didn't pay me for my assistance in your passport thing, did you?
No, I didn't.
Did I ask for any money?
No, you didn't.
Is there any evidence that I'm actually like an absolute nut that does whatever God asked me to do whenever He asked me to do it and doesn't send a bill? Is there any evidence for that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm like, if my wife heard me right now, she can get this online, but I've cashed in my chips for people before. There was a young man who needed to send off to a ministry thing. He needed some help. So I don't go raising funds for myself for the ministry I've been doing since 1997. I just began to do what God asked me to do, and hopefully somebody feeds us while we're doing it. And we've had lots of miracles because people go, God told me to give you $1,500. Well, guess what? I needed. Like, I had a guy tell me, God told me I'm supposed to give you money. And so later on, when my kids were in college, they were already in the college a couple of years, I needed $1,600 or they were going to send them home. And I needed $13,000 for the next semester. I get a guy calls me on the phone and says, God wants me to live on the edge. You got a need, David. What is it? I said, I need $1,600 sent to the college. Done. Where do I send it? And then within 2 hours, somebody called me and said, I really believe I'm supposed to pay your two kids tuition for the next semester. It's over $13,000, right? So, I mean, that all happened in one day, actually in about a 2-hour period. So I've never like raised money, but right now for La Cubana, I would like to have people, and I set up this video stream today, and one of the options that showed up, I got this Streamlabs kind of software, and it had a thing said, put a PayPal thing there. So there's some PayPal thing that's supposed to show up on this. I don't know what. But I really want people to stop and think about if they would like to partner with us, with me. And that's all I'm saying. So this,
I need
yeah,
to
go
add
ahead.
something to that, David, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I want your viewers/listeners to know that my husband and I are not going to get Social Security benefits.
Right.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to get any underlying, neon lights, any benefits from the government at all for anything.
What did you do with your stimulus check?
We didn't get one because we didn't have a bank account.
or yes, etc. Yes. Right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah, well, it's because you're not a socialist.
Exactly. I came out of that. Don't want to be one, But the thing is, more importantly than anything, God wants to be the sovereign of the kingdom in which we live.
Yes.
Okay, there are two kingdoms, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of this world.
Yes.
Okay, God has His kingship, His sovereignty, His jurisdiction, and His laws.
Yeah.
And He expects us to follow them. That is the gospel. The gospel is the good news of the kingdom.
Yes.
It's all about kingdom. It's all about who is going to rule over you.
And
that is the
yes.
entire gospel.
Yes. I when I started this ethics thing for my young adult class, and it was weird. Normally I just get into the Bible, go way into the language, go way into Hebrew, way into Greek, and do whatever I have and see the things that pop that we just don't hear in Christendom, because there's just stuff that the average church just kind of surfaces and doesn't dig that much. So normally I do that, but I was so exhausted from all the things I've been doing lately and fighting this lawsuit and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just spent. And I started a small group discussion in lieu of doing my Bible study, but it's biblically based. But then it hits me, I needed to do ethics training. So what I did, the first assignment I did for my young adults, so it's anywhere from 18 to about 25, 26, is I had them read Blackstone's commentaries, the introduction, book number 2, on the natures of law in general. That's 16 pages, single space, that I gave as homework to my young adult Bible study class because it defines ethics in there. So they learn about revealed law, the law that's deducible through nature, and so that which is expressed in the Word of God, and then there's things that we can figure out, and then the magistracy, the civil law, or whatever you want to call it, is the things that God is indifferent to, and then those things where there's nothing expressly written or deducible or in civil law is called ethics, where you weigh the right and the wrong of it. So it's all ethics, and by nature are situational. But it also says in there that it talks about our dependency, and that we're bound to obey those upon whom we depend. So, and in proportion to where our dependency exists. The eyes of the Lord look to and fro throughout the earth, looking to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are loyal to him. So our dependency is, we are bound to obey those upon whom we depend. So if I'm absolutely dependent on the living God, guess who I'm stuck obeying? Not just when I feel like it. I am on the hook. But,
sure.
But if we're dependent on society, we're on that hook. And sometimes we are tempted to abandon dependency on God and obedience to God because of this dependency on the magistracy.
Right. And if there's anything, no matter what arena, what sphere, if there's anything that you lose strikes terror in your soul, that's your idol.
Yes.
Okay, and so I've heard actually people say to me, I cannot live without Social Security. I cannot live, they're Christians, or they claim to be, but you cannot live without this thing?
Right.
Then you just said to God, you're not good enough for me.
Right.
You're not going to provide for me. You're a liar.
I had a lady.
Oh my God.
I had a lady come up to me, an elderly lady, and said, "I've hated you, and I want to apologize." But she hated me. I said, "Sister, why did you hate me?" Because I thought you were trying to take away my Social Security. Now that's irrational. But what I was excited about, and it was the same week, I had 5. How many people? 5 come to me and say that. At least 3 said they've hated me. 2 of them said apologize for defaming me. And we had like a guest speaker at church. Very effective, because all of a sudden, whatever they said in the little sermonettes, where the guy did, his guest speaker, it inspired at least 3 actually said they hated me. But again, this one lady, her thing was that they were going to take her Social Security. But what was beautiful was, notwithstanding that she humbled herself and came to me, a much younger person, and apologized very just graciously, and was so embarrassed and was laughing at herself how ridiculous it was, and asked for my forgiveness. And of course, yes. And thank you for hiding the fact that you didn't. Well, actually, I could tell that some people just didn't talk to me anymore, and I suspected they hated my guts, right? So, but what you say is absolutely true. And this is, so what's good about our discussion, Sister La Cubana, is that it isn't just about the number. And my ministry is all about what is God upon, what is it that we need to depend upon God for which we need to depend upon God. I don't want to end in a preposition. So what is it? And can we identify our lack of trust, giving lip service, religious lip service, but not trusting in the narrow road? And in fact, if Jesus is calling us to take up our cross, he's asking us to die. So guess what? Yeah, you can't live on your Social Security. You know what might happen? You might die. I mean, I'm kind of being sort of silly, but if we will die, in fact, he said if we want to live, what did he say, Sister La Cubana? If we want to live, then
we must die to ourselves.
That's right. So our encouragement to our viewer after all of this is ultimately this is a walk trusting in the living God in our actions and our words, and standing back and watching the salvation of the living God. So if you'd like to be a partner with that, I'm going to give y'all, the public, my cell phone number, 757-320-2220. I could give you a bank account to send it to a certain ministry, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want the feds to come in and shut down my bank account, okay? Which they could do anyway. I mean, but I know that sounds a little paranoid, but I've had a few computer hacks in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was a little weird. And a web page that got shut down that was dealing with these things, while all my other web pages weren't touched. So 757-320-2220. I'm going to give you my ministry email, David at, I'm going to give you my David Alan Carmichael, David AlanCarmichael, David Alan Carmichael at protonmail.com. And you can communicate to me. I can set up either, because I don't even know what this video thing, I don't know if the PayPal thing works on this thing. This is a total experiment. If it works, do on the PayPal. I don't get your information. It's processed. I'm sure there's just absolute freedom in giving it. A certain portion will come out. I think it's like 3.2%. And if you'd like a donation, if you want to communicate and you want something for your taxes, then I can do that through our ministry and give you a report back. Some people don't care. Some people don't want the left hand to know the right hand's doing or whatever. I will accommodate whatever is important to you in this. And if you'd like to communicate any kind of support for La Cubana in her last year of law school, an unnumbered woman, and to stand back and see the salvation of the Lord, because we've seen it for her. But I would love to have La Cubana. Wouldn't it be nice if I had access to a lawyer to help me? Would that be neat? I'm not committing you.
I'm here for that, yeah.
But I'm not committing you. But wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? I can't steal that song. So that's it. Is there anything else we need to talk about before I check out and make sure this goes up to YouTube as something that other people can see?
No, remember that it's also the experience that both my husband and I had with the driver license and with other people, and the experience a short experience for now concerning the ministry and bank accounts. I mean, we still got stories to tell.
Well, because we're going to just wrap it up for the subject matter today, I got advice. We did an experimental one yesterday with a different media, and I got some feedback saying keep it to one subject and keep it lighthearted and keep it. He said it was educational, but so I kind of went back into my talk radio format. So it's it was personal, but a little bit more kind of brusque, kind of edgy a little bit, and to keep it a little bit light at the same time that it's got strong impact. So I appreciate you very much, and your husband, who remains not published by name, and that's it. So God bless you, and we're going to be talking again soon. Pray for me. Let me give you an update. Pray for me. We had a miracle Friday morning. I was going to meet with the U.S. attorney, and because of a document they put in the circuit court, and it was with their reply they had a motion, and then I was going to have to say, well, are we going to have to, send in a supplement to deal with your motion that's in the reply, right? Reply is supposed to be done. It turns out Thursday afternoon, the circuit court denied jurisdiction to me and Larry, but granted jurisdiction to Michelle and Rick, because it was very clear that their stuff was final. And it just seems this particular district court, the DC appellate court, is 50-50 on whether they'll take an interlocutory appeal. And so it seems that this panel had a per curiam order that says, no, we're not doing anything interlocutory. Leave us alone. Get back in the district court. So that I didn't know about that because we're doing mail. They haven't given us electronic filing on this in the Court of Appeals. So I didn't know that they'd come out with an order Thursday afternoon. And I've got a meeting with the U.S. attorney on Friday. But I woke up on Friday morning, 4:11 in the morning, like wide awake. It's dark. I'm wide awake. And I'm like, don't feel like going back to sleep. And I just felt like I needed to start working on this stuff. And as I start typing this, what I thought would ended up being a supplemental motion or something like that, supplement or an objection or whatever, I had to go to the circuit court's docket to get a reference number on their last order. It was a couple of weeks ago. And when I was there, look what I saw. An order that came out, a significant order, per curiam, an absolute, saying, no, you guys go back in the district court, and these other two are now going to be dealing with their stuff on the Court of Appeals. And so that changed my entire discussion with what I had to prepare for the U.S. attorney for that meeting. I was ready for the meeting. And the other thing is I didn't waste any more time typing on the thing that I was typing. So I see that as God set my daily schedule. I'm excited about that. You know?
Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, that's what we're supposed to be of. You know, we're supposed to be racking up these testimonies because we overcome him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, and we do not love our lives even unto death. Those three things is what defines an overcomer.
Yes. Woo!
Those three things.
Woo!
And so, but the word of a testimony, your testimony equips me. It gives me arrows in the quiver, okay?
Good.
Because the Lord already did the blood. Your testimony gives me quiver, arrows in my quiver, and I do not love my life. So when you have nothing, Janis Joplin, when you got nothing to lose. Okay?
Okay, that's profound. Bless her heart.
Yeah, really. Well, Chris Christopherson was the one that wrote that, but it's true.
Right.
So when you don't own your own life, you got nothing to lose, hon.
That's right. Well, my sister La Cubana, gracias. And
De nada.
Mi placer, por favor. See?
Okay. No, mi placer.
Yeah, see, exactly. Oh, I'm so glad. That's better. Okay, thank you. So makes people think I might know Spanish, and I don't. Just little snippets, just to make people think I know Spanish. Okay.
Hey, see there.
So that's good. So thank you. God bless you. And we're closing out.
You.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay, so that was impromptu. I called her like 3 minutes before we went streaming. And I didn't tell anybody we were streaming. So I've got 5 subscribers. That's it from yesterday's video. And a lot of my audience won't subscribe because they want to stay off the radar. So this is what we're doing. And I intend to do this every Sunday night, Lord willing, and begin to equip people to help themselves, to encourage their faith, to encourage their work, to have interviews like this with knowledgeable people, and it'll be informative, entertaining, encouraging, and give one another an opportunity to encourage one another to love and good works. That's it. So thank you, viewer, and share this with your friends. Subscribe, and for the sake, and I don't know if there's a little note thing, like if you want to put in shipping or something. I don't know what's on the PayPal thing. I've not seen what's this going to happen so far. But whatever note you have, if you have a specific thing you want done with the money, then any gift that you give, I don't know if that's going to be an ability or not. But I really want to take care of her, and let's see if we together can get her in her last year. If you've gone through 2, you're doing well. And this unnumbered woman, to get her to the next phase of this adventure of faith, obedience, and sacrifice. That's it. Bye-bye. So now I got to learn how to stop the stream. Okay, so I just said stop. Let's stop the recording. I don't know how to stop the live. Let's see how this works. And unnumbered man, YouTube.
To
There
get
I
her
am.
to the next.
Oh, that's scary. Okay, so new pin chat. I'm not sure how I do this. Not really sure how it stops. So I'm just going to turn it off. We'll see what happens. Okay, I'm still there. I'm still streaming. Here it says the live button. So somebody help me. This is going to be like, recorded, So what is so strange here? How do you turn the dumb thing off? Somebody help me. Here we go. New your live stream in a web browser.